Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with our monthly interview. Egon von Greyerz is also back from the basement in Britain to his usual location in Zurich. Egon, it was a pleasure to see you at the Munich show. I hope you had interesting talks with the people there. And I think also the 2,000 euro topic for physical purchases was a big topic, correct?
Yes, absolutely. No, I mean, there was a very good show, Jan, in Munich, and as always, a very enthusiastic crowd. I think there were more people than normally, so it was good to see. So we had a very good time there.
Yes, it was definitely a bigger crowd than in the previous years. We saw it in particular on Friday, and as I just told you, Egon, this it came from the European Union, those directive that the money laundering is, they want to enforce more measures against money laundering. But the Bundestag, or Germany as always, is übererfüllen this, overdoing, and they lowered the ceiling for physical purchase to 2,000 euros. And I know for a fact that the government parties, SPD and CDU, were in favor of it. The left party, the Greens and the FDP, were neutral, and only one party opposed against it, and that was the AfD. So I think the reasoning for this, we had this in a previous video already, for money laundering is a joke, because the FDP had such a question to the parliament, and they had 4 cases last year, 4. So that's,
yeah.
They think we are totally dumb.
Well, Jan, well, as we have discussed before, we are now in the era that George Orwell predicted in his 1984 book. We are being controlled by Big Brother now, and Big Brother is watching everywhere. That means more regulations, more restrictions, more control, and it's not the world that most people like to live in. Sadly, we can't stop it. There's nothing wrong with, sure, we want to do the right things legally and follow all the rules, but we don't want to be supervised 24 hours per day, and that's what's happening now. We have discussed before, you and I, that gold will be, in my view, regulated in most countries, which means at some point it will be under the same restrictions as money and as investments and securities, etc. Because gold, from the authorities' point of view, that always suspect the worst, they see gold as something that people can hide away from them. The fact that gold is money that has been used for thousands of years, and that actually that's all it is, that is not something that the authorities understand. They just see it as an asset they want to control. So we have to learn to live with it, and 2,000, of course, is a ridiculous amount, but that's the way it's going, and I can see it happening in Germany or in the EU, the control of precious metals in the next few years, and probably in the US also, because they're the ones who are after everybody when it comes to checking what they do with their money. So we will just have to follow the rules, but still, that doesn't stop people from owning gold. It's hard. It makes it harder, of course, to be anonymous, even if you do it totally legally. But that's the way it is now, and sadly, there's nothing we can do about it.
And Egon, the headline of my video this time is probably gold and silver. It's a vote with one's feet. So, and I think I just told you the reasoning, the public reasoning for this new law is a joke. So there must be other reason behind it. They are simply afraid that too many people flee from the paper money to solid money. And the big names are also preparing for something big. I found an article on Zero Hedge a while ago. They asked very wealthy investors what to do with their assets or what they plan in the next months. And they said 25% of them said they have sold stocks already. against cash, and 60% of them want to cash out or sell risk assets in the next months. So it seems they smell something, and what they smell, the ordinary people on the street should see this also and act accordingly.
Yes, well, first of all, I mean, it's obviously clear that people want to get away from paper money, since it has throughout history been destroyed by governments and central banks, and that's happening right now also. So it's fully understandable. Still, there are not many people, as we know, that own gold today, maybe only 0.5% of world financial assets, but that's coming. And as you say, the wealthy now, they are getting worried. I mean, all markets are in bubble territory. The stock market is an absolute bubble around the world, and I mean, I've said it for some time. I think it's a final topping action now of a long-term bull market in stocks, and that market is going to end. Whether it's going to end before the year end or just at the beginning of next year, I see clear signs that it's ending, and therefore, and then when the downturn comes, it's going to be vicious, and people are going to lose a lot of money. So some of the wealthy are seeing this and are now taking action and going into cash, and rightly so. But I saw in this survey, I think was it UBS that did it, probably?
Yes.
The bank. It seems that the people who are getting out, they think that it's temporary, but I think they're not going to get it back in again, or they shouldn't, because once it starts going down, it's going to be, as I said, violent. Now they're going into cash at some point in the next few months, and in the next few years, most of them will go into gold also. But so that's going to happen, as we both know, and they don't know it yet, but we know it. Because gold is going to reflect all these problems.
And Egon, the question is, the stock markets are still at elevated levels that nobody could have imagined years ago. And I found also an interesting article that the stock buybacks, which were very supportive for keeping this market so high, are plummeting. And as we just said, a good part of the wealthy is taking precautions and getting money out, and nevertheless the stock markets are so high, and there must be a reason for that. And I found something very interesting from very recent research. I show it to our viewers in a second. Here, Egon. This is one example, because you are a Swiss guy, and I found something from the Swiss National Bank, because the money that is drawn out from some sources, it has to be replaced, and one big replacer is the Swiss National Bank, which bought, since we have here this chart, since 2014, 70 billion or so, mainly US stocks. This is one reason for keeping the stock market up, and they buy it obviously with new created money, but they don't invest in the infrastructure of Switzerland. They rather buy stocks.
This is an absolute scandal, the whole thing. But if we first talk about the bigger problem, but the scandal is the Swiss National Bank. But we first talk about the bigger issue that you're raising, is that yes, there is a lot of support around the world for stocks, we just talked about the buybacks in the US, and of course that's, as you said, that has been rocket fuel for stocks in the US, and managements have borrowed money, spent the cash of the companies, borrowed money to buy back stock in order to improve the earnings per share and the bonus and the option that they can then cash in. So that's in itself a scandal, and once that stops, then of course the market will quickly lose a lot of the support. And the other one here, the Swiss National Bank, I mean, that is the biggest casino in the world, or the biggest hedge fund in the world. The Swiss National Bank has a balance sheet of 860 milliarden Swiss francs, and they have, out of that, they have 700 billion in foreign currency, which is in dollars, in euros, and in other currencies. And out of that 700 billion that they have in foreign currencies, almost 100 billion, as you just showed, is investment in US stocks. So they're speculating in Apple, in Microsoft, in Google, etc., with borrowed money in Switzerland, because they're printing money in order to do the speculation. Of course, the purpose of blowing up the balance sheet, which is about 120% of Swiss GDP, the purpose of blowing up the Swiss National Bank's balance sheet is to sell Swiss francs and to buy euros to keep the Swiss franc low, which is also a crazy policy, in my view, because Switzerland has always benefited from a strong currency. Nevertheless, that's what they're doing, therefore, they own a lot of US stocks. Japan, for example, the Japanese Bank of Japan, they buy all the ETFs.
Let me interrupt you here, because Japan, I have something more to show. The Swiss National Bank is not the only one who is pumping up the markets. There are others also engaged, and we know the suspects. Those are always the same. Here we see our known suspects. Those are the assets of the big central banks: the Fed, the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, and the Chinese Central Bank. And if you go to Japan, what you just said, they are purchasing, or they are increasing their balance sheet on a continuous basis. It's going for many years. The Federal Reserve, that was their tapering, a joke. Now it's starting to go up again. And also the European Central Bank announced to buy again. They mostly buy bonds, as we know it, so they drive the yields to negative rates. And altogether, they are helping to keep the market up. And without this, maybe we would see an incredible market meltdown already, but not yet.
Yes, so here you see from 2007, all these major central banks had between 1 and 2 trillion this is in dollars, or $1 or $2 trillion was the balance sheet total of their central bank, and now that's gone to 5 to 5.5 trillion for 3 of them, or 4, and then the Fed is slightly behind because they reduced a little bit with their quantitative tightening, QT, but now, of course, they've started properly QE again, printing. So yeah, they're all printing.
We will for Egon, and it's now gaining pace, I think.
Excuse me?
That's the total of the balance sheets together, yeah, of those 4.
Yeah, almost 20 trillion a year. So we've gone from 5 trillion in beginning of 2007 to 20 trillion. But just you wait, Jan. This is just the beginning. So, because we are now at the beginning of the biggest money printing bonanza that the world has ever seen, as the central banks are going to be panicking about well, first of all, the banking system, which is clearly in trouble. This is why the Fed now started printing properly every month with overnight repos and with normal QE, etc. And of course, the ECB is also now started with 20 billion a month, and the Fed 60 billion normal money, and then another 50, 60, 70 billion of overnight money and 2-week money. So this is now starting, Jan, and when the first banking problem arises, and I don't think we are that far from that, then you will see the money printing accelerating rapidly.
And I think the time is running out for people to act and to move into the precious metals. I said at the beginning, in my view, to buy precious metals is a vote with one's feet, and the governments, they hate when people take their own decisions and think clearly and act to preserve their wealth. And we talked at the beginning about 2,000 euro. That's a joke, but the ends, Egon, the ends matter. If you have too many of them, they become mighty. And this is the message, in my view, for today, that the people, doesn't matter how much money you have, take care for your savings, do something with precious metals. The prices, I showed it in the last video, in particular for silver, are artificially manipulated to the downside, and it's, in my opinion, the chance of a lifetime and the only way to get out of this mess. Final words, Egon?
Yes, as we both agree, is the financial system is going to be in a mess. We don't even know if the banking system will survive in its present state. I don't think it will. And if it survives, the money that is in the bank will be devalued or debased by all the money printing, so that it'll be worthless. So you're absolutely right. This is the time to buy insurance, and buy insurance is the best form we know, which is physical gold and physical silver, and keep it outside the financial system. I mean, now's the time. It's still very cheap. Gold and silver are incredibly cheap, and it's absolutely the right time to buy it now. And this is not, we're not trying to push any investment onto people. We're just trying to help them to protect their future lives.
Absolutely.
Just like, so they don't end up like in Venezuela, for example, now, which is a high risk.
And Egon, at the end, I'd like to give a notice to our audience. We decided to do a question and answer session in our December video. I asked all visitors, whoever didn't have a chance to talk to you personally in Munich or wherever, send us your questions. I will put my email address below the video or write it into the comments. Egon would be willing to answer your questions, as many as we can go through in the next session. And yes, it's a good chance to ask him whatever burdens you.
Yes, that'd be very interesting. So we were very pleased to receive written questions, because it'll be more difficult to have it live. So written questions, and then we will answer them. Jan and I will answer them live in the next session. So
yes, we will do this. So Egon, till next time, and have a good day in Switzerland, a good rest of the day. Bye bye.
Thank you very much, Jan. Always good to talk to you. Thanks very much.